What's going on, guys? My name is Kyle. Welcome back. Today we're going to try and do something that I have never done before, changing a fuel filter. I've never attempted this. I literally have zero idea what I need to do. So I'm going to bring the car in and we'll just run through the process of what we need to do and see how difficult this is actually going to be. Okay, so the car is in and she is filthy. So gross. I washed this a couple of days ago. What happened? Anyway, let's run through what we need to do to install this brand new fuel filter. Now, full disclosure, I was not joking when I meant I don't have any clue what I'm doing. I've read a couple of things online that are different to this specific model of car, but I think I'm gonna just put everything that I've read together and hopefully we can get a good result. I have literally no idea if that's just me being too ambitious, but I think we could do this. I think we could do this, hopefully. I don't know, working with fuel makes me very nervous. Okay, so here's the plan. Now, this fuel filter specifically is in the back seat of the car. I'm very fortunate with this one. I don't have to jack it up. I don't have to take the fuel tank out. I can do it all while the car's on the ground, which is great because a lot of the things I read online said you have to jack the car up and drop the fuel tank, which apparently isn't the case. So, I mean, I hope that's not the case. So from what I understand, I can take off the bottom part of the back seats and then there's a little fuel door there that I can take off and that has access to the fuel filter and the fuel pump. If that's not the case, then we'll work that out once we take the seats off, but I have a pretty good feeling that that's where it is. So once we have access to the fuel pump and filter, before we take anything apart or disconnect any lines, we have to depressurize the fuel system, which is another one of those things that just makes me really nervous. And in theory, it doesn't seem too difficult. But when you think about disconnecting fuel lines and letting fuel go everywhere, it's a bit of a concern. But again, from what I've read online, it doesn't seem to be as scary as it sounds. So that's the next step. After we've got all the pressure out of the fuel lines, it's literally as simple as taking the pump and filter out, which is going to be combined as a singular assembly, taking the fuel pump out of the old filter, getting the new filter, putting the fuel pump into the new filter, reassembling everything, reconnecting the fuel lines, and trying to start the car. And when we lay it all out like this step by step, it doesn't feel as daunting as it is. So maybe it's not. With any luck, it should go smoothly. So the first thing that we're gonna do is take the bottom of the back seats out and see if that's where the fuel pump and filter is, because otherwise we're gonna be working something else out. All right, let's get these seats out. Okay, so from what I remember, I think it's just as easy as like popping these up. Oh. And then we can just lift the whole thing out. There you go. Nice when things just work the way you think they will. All right, so let's fold this back and there we go. That is our access to our fuel filter and pump. Simples. Let me give you a slightly better look. So if you see just here, you have a little fuel door there. So that has the fuel pump and filter with 4 little screws around it. So what we're gonna do is take out those screws, get that panel off and see what's underneath. I think I'm right. I might be wrong. Okay, let's get this fuel door off. I don't know how easy it is to see on the camera either, but it looks like it's been beaten to all hell. It's like somebody's pile drived it when they're getting in the car. Might have to replace that next time I go to the wreckers. Anyway, let's get this cover off and see what it looks like. All right, let's see. Oh, and there we go. Our fuel pump and fuel filter. And it is revolting. Oh my God. Let me get the workshop vacuum and we'll vacuum as much of that up as we possibly can, because I do not want to open this up and let all of that stuff fall into the fuel tank, because that is going to be a big old no-no. Okay, it's making a little bit of a difference, but what I'm gonna do is get a brush and just brush all the loose dirt off while I vacuum to make sure I don't let any just disappear down the back. But yeah, let's do that now quickly. I just wanna try and make sure that there's as little amount of dust and dirt going inside as possible. All of this stuff gets brought up from underneath the car. So I'm not surprised that it's absolutely filthy, because that's why you have that little cover to protect the inside of the car, but I want to try and get as much off as I can before I take out that fuel filter, because any of that getting inside the fuel tank, I assume, is not going to be a good time. So let's get the vacuum cleaner again and we'll try and, I don't know, make this a bit better. All right, so the top of the filter and the pump have both been cleaned. So now what we need to do is depressurize the fuel system. So let me explain the easiest way to do this from what I've read online. The easiest way, apparently, is to take out the fuel pump relay, which is in the fuse box under the bonnet of the car, and then you just need to start the car and it will stall when it runs out of fuel. Because the relay is removed, the fuel pump isn't working, so it's going to use up any remaining fuel that's in the lines because the pump's not sending any new fuel. After the car stalls, you want to crank it another couple of times to make sure it gets out those last little bits, and then you should be good to go. I've never done that before. I've never had the need to depressurize a fuel system. So let's just open up the bonnet and see if we can even find this fuel pump relay that people keep talking about. Unfortunately, we don't have an abundance of space in this garage to set up lights and cameras and put the car in here with enough space to walk around and work on it. But luckily, the fuse box is right here. Could you imagine if it was on the other side? You'd have to move everything. Very lucky day. Anyway, let's pop this off and have a look at it. All right, now I've not really had to use this fuse box at all. The only times that I've had to actually open this up and look is when Millie and I had the infamous horn incident before we changed the steering wheel and we were stuck on the side of the road trying to find the horn relay. But that's a different story. Anyway, this is the fuse box, and this is a little diagram that you get inside the fuse box cover. So you can see there's things for the battery, there's lights, park lights, we have heated seat fuse, which we don't have. That'll probably be one of the more higher end Lancer models. We have the horn relay, number 7, we found that one out. There's a couple of different things. I need to find one for the fuel pump, and I have literally no idea what one that is. So let me see if I can get the user manual and find out which one is for the fuel pump, because I have literally no idea. Shout out to the previous owner for having the original manual. Thank you. So what have we got? The audio instructions. We have the place that it originally got purchased from, which was Essendon, Mitsubishi. Shout out Essendon, Mitsubishi. CH Lancer Owner's Manual. Okay, just look. I just want to appreciate, I know this has got nothing to do with the owner's manual, but just appreciate that, you know? My God. Anyway, okay. All right, number 8, maintenance. We need to go fuses and fuse links. And would you look at that? We have a full list. I don't know how you guys can even see that. We have a full list of different fuses, what they do, what the capacity is. Thank you so much, previous owner. I don't know how well you guys are gonna see this. I'm just really excited. So hopefully you can see what the hell I'm talking about. You have a list of fuses. We're looking for number 15, which is the fuel pump. And then there's a little diagram in your service manual that shows exactly where it is. Number 15, which is the blade fuse right at the back, because this is the front, so right at the back of the fuse box. So let's go have a look and see if we can find that, that 15 amp fuse. All right, let's see if we can find it. So the diagram shows the front of the fuse box being here. So looking in this line, I'm assuming it's that one right at the back there, number 15. Let's get some needle nose pliers, take that fuse out and start the car. We all know, obviously, that I'm still very new to my car learning journey, but all the electronics in these cars are still the big thing that really, really scares me. So, I mean, I'm glad that we're dabbling a little bit. So let's take this fuse out. Fuse is done. I'm gonna lay this somewhere safe and let's start the car. All right, let's give it a go. This feels so weird, knowingly starting the car in the hopes that it's gonna stall. I don't know, man. I'll make sure it's not in gear. Okay, so let's just, I don't know, hopefully it starts at all, I guess. Very strange putting the keys in the ignition and not hearing the fuel pump prime. Anyway, all right. Well, it didn't last very long. So once it stalls after we've started it, it says that we want to crank it for around 5 seconds to make sure all of the fuel is out of the line. So that's what we're going to do, and then we should be good. Let's go. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that that means that there's no more fuel left in the fuel lines. Let's disconnect the battery, and then we can start taking apart the fuel pump and filter. All right, so I've disconnected the battery. Let's jump in the back and see what it's like to take off these fuel lines, and hopefully we don't make a mess, because I don't want fuel everywhere. Okay, so before I undo any of these fuel lines, what I'm gonna do is just unplug this electrical connector, which I assume is sending power to the fuel pump. Just get all of that dirt out of there. One thing I'm gonna do is keep this vacuum cleaner on hand, because this is just gonna get filthy. Anyway, I've got a couple of rags here that I'm just gonna lay around the area, just in case there is any splash of some fuel. We're gonna just make sure it gets soaked up into the rags instead of anything else and makes everything smell like fuel. All right, I guess let's just take this hose clamp off. I really need to get one of those hose clamp removal tools. It'll make this job a hell of a lot easier. Okay, well, there we go. Depressurizing the fuel tank was a great idea because nothing came out really. A little bit of fuel, but nothing crazy. We only have one more line left, which is this one. Does this untwist? Oh. That just pulls off. Again, only a little bit of fuel on that one, but we are now fuel line free. There is a little bit of fuel left in there, nothing too crazy. All right, so the fuel filter and fuel pump are now completely disconnected from the rest of the car. Let's get a socket. This looks like an 8mm, looks quite small. We'll go get a socket and we'll take off this outer ring, and then the whole thing should just lift out. Should, being the optimum word here. Okay, so let's see, is it an 8mm? Oh, it is an 8mm. I'm getting better at this. Let's crack all these nuts. I can't get this ratchet into some of these ones at the back, but I tell you what, I bought a set of these spanners right before Christmas, and it has honestly been the best decision I have ever made. Let's see if this works. Yes, it does. Let's get these all undone. All right, so I've got all of the stuff out. Let me just tuck these fuel lines out of the way. Same with this. I've got everything out. Let's try and... well, that actually comes off easier than I thought it would. Oh, there we go. That's the ring off. Now, God, that's filthy even under there. What is going on? Okay, so now from what I can tell, I should be able to just lift this up. There shouldn't be anything else connecting it now. And there we go. That is our fuel pump and fuel filter. There's actually a lot more bloody fuel in the car than I thought there would be. All right, let's try and get this out without spilling fuel everywhere, and we'll set it up on a bench and just see what is going on here. Okay, well, here she is. Would you believe me if I told you it reeks of fuel? I don't know why. Now, when I took this out of the car, it still had quite a bit of fuel inside it. I assume that it fills itself and then it filters the fuel. I don't really have much of an idea, but one thing to note, if you are doing this, be aware that there's probably still fuel inside. So I just covered my hands in fuel. So what I'm gonna do before we start handling this and taking the pump out of it is just putting some gloves on, which I probably should have done before we got this far, but yeah, you live and learn, I guess. All right, let me move the camera so you guys can get a better view of what's going on, and then we'll have a look to see how this goes together. All right, so this is essentially what we're looking at. Now, I don't know how easy it's gonna be to see for you guys, but right in here, there's a little, or this cylinder here, essentially, right here is where the fuel pump sits. So it sits under here all the way through, that's the fuel pump. This little baggie attaches to the fuel pump? I have no idea. Before we start taking any of this stuff apart, what I think we should do is open the new fuel filter, see what that actually comes with to see what we need to replace, and then we can look at getting the fuel pump out of this one and putting it into the new filter. So this is our new fuel filter, and you can just tell, let's get in the right orientation, just look at the difference. Like obviously this one's gonna be newer because it's got newer plastics and stuff, but I don't even know if this was white originally. I dare say this probably was white back in the day. I have no idea. I genuinely don't know when this one was changed. I don't know how old this filter is. I don't even know if this is gonna make much of a difference, but that's our new fuel filter. Let's start taking this apart and seeing what it is we actually have that's part of the filter and what's part of the pump. I'm just gonna lay down some rags so we can put the spare parts on top of that, just to make sure no fuel is getting anywhere. I think a lot of it's out and evaporated by now, but let's see. Okay, so I can see at the bottom here, there's this little cage that clips on. Again, I don't know if this is the right thing to do or the wrong order to do things in, but I guess we'll just try and see what it does. The last thing I want to do is break this because I don't have a spare fuel pump to go back into the car. Okay, so that's that little bottom cage part which holds the fuel pump in. You guys can't even see what I'm talking about. Holds this fuel pump in. I might zoom out just a little. Okay, that might make it a little bit easier. Sorry about that. So the fuel pump, this little cap sits under the fuel pump, and then we have that little baggie, which I assume is to filter the fuel going into the pump before the filter filters it. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Okay, let's take this massive O-ring off because it's just flopping around everywhere. What connectors do I need to take off to get this fuel pump out? Oh, okay, well, here we have our fuel pump. So this is the thing that's actually sending the fuel in through the fuel lines and into the engine. This is what we need to put onto the new one. So I'm actually gonna give this a little wipe down because around the pump itself looks revolting. I think this might be something we're changing in the future as well, because what I can see, this is definitely the original fuel pump, and that's the fuel pump done. This fuel filter, I'm assuming, is now completely disassembled because looking at the new filter, they look the same. What I'm gonna do is grab the fuel pump, put it into this new filter, we'll reconnect everything in the way we're supposed to, and we should be good to just reassemble everything completely, I guess. Let's do that. Well, I think that I did it. I mean, everything's back in. I've got no spare parts that didn't come with the filter. So I think we're good to go. I put the ring back on the top to seal it. All we need to do now, really, I think, is just put it back in the car, I guess. I'll take these little hose ends off so we can clamp the new hoses on. I think we're good to go. Let's jump back in the car and mount this back in there and test it out, I guess. I'm surprised by how easy that went back together. It's not as difficult as you make it out to be in your head. I can tell you that now. Let's chuck it back in the car and see what we need to do next. All right, let's go. Let's just go straight for it, I guess. We'll put this back into the tank. Now I'm fairly certain that it was, I'm gonna say this way. I think it was about there. That feels right. So let's get this ring. We'll chuck this ring back on top, tighten it all down, connect it all back up and see if it works. There we go. I think we're good to go. I'm gonna give this a little wipe up, make sure there's no excess fuel hanging around. Let's go put that fuse back in the fuse box and we'll see if the fuel pump even primes. Okay, the battery's reconnected. The fuel pump fuse has been reinserted. Let's chuck the keys in the ignition. I'll flick it over to accessory and we'll just see if the fuel pump primes. God, I hope this works. That sounded like the fuel pump worked. All right, let's try and start the car. Now I know it's gonna like stutter a little bit because it's not gonna have any fuel in the lines, but let's see. I cannot believe it works. Oh my God, yes. Oh, very, very happy. Oh my God, yes. I legitimately cannot tell you how relieved I am. Oh my God. So all we need to do now is put the cover back over the fuel pump, chuck the back seats in, and we're done. Let's freaking do it. So there you go. With a couple of hours work and a little bit of Google research, you can change your own fuel filter, turns out. Part of me genuinely thought this was gonna take 2 or 3 attempts with me Googling things about why it's not working and then trying to fix it, but it just works. It just works first try. I don't know if that means that I'm getting better at working on cars or if this is just a hell of a lot easier than you initially think it is. Regardless, I am so freaking chuffed that that worked and that there's a new filter in the car. Also, I don't know if you've realized through the filming of this video, but we have a brand new Midnight Tune Company shirt. This is the retro logo. I'll leave a link to it in the description. We have worldwide shipping and every sale goes towards making new content. So if you want to support the channel, go and grab one. If you guys like this video, don't forget to leave it a thumbs up. Also subscribe. I post new videos every week. You don't want to miss it. If you have any suggestions for things that you want to see me try with this car, leave me a comment below. Whether that's doing a full service on the transmission, which I still need to do, replacing the brakes, whatever you want to see, okay? If there's things that you're curious about and you want to see somebody else mess it up first, leave me a comment below. I'm open to most things. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media. I'll leave all the links in the description. But other than that, I'm going to see you guys next week. I love your faces. Bye.